The silent arrival. The Zephyron Empire had conquered 17 star systems in just 3 cycles. Their crystalline warships moved through space like predators, each vessel a perfect geometric nightmare of angles and energy. No force in the known galaxy had lasted more than a standard day against their assault. They communicated through harmonics that shattered lesser species' neural pathways. They wielded gravity like a weapon, crushing entire fleets into singularities smaller than atoms. The galaxy had accepted its fate. The Zephyron would rule and all others would serve or perish, but the galaxy had not yet met humanity. Captain Marcus Chen stood in the void between realities, his ship existing in what Earth scientists called the Shadow Realm. It was a dimension slightly out of phase with normal space, discovered by accident when a fusion reactor malfunction had thrown an entire research station into a parallel existence. Where other species had pursued energy weapons and shield technology, humans had stumbled upon something far more terrifying. They had learned to become ghosts. The RSS Spectre floated in this twilight space alongside 43 other vessels of Earth's Shadow Fleet. Through the dimensional barrier, Marcus could see the ongoing massacre in the Axiom system. The peaceful Axiom Alliance, a confederation of 12 species dedicated to art and science, was being systematically destroyed. Their beautiful city ships, each one a work of living architecture grown over centuries, burst like soap bubbles under Zephyron gravity weapons. Commander Elena Vasquez materialized on his bridge. Though materialized was not quite the right word, in the Shadow Realm, humans existed as quantum probabilities, neither fully here nor there. She was his second in command, a woman who had earned her position by successfully executing the Mars Station rescue, where she had pulled 3,000 colonists through dimensional space without a single casualty. Her dark eyes held the weight of what they were about to do. "Marcus, we just received a transmission from the Axiom Council," Elena said, her voice carrying that odd echo that all sounds had in this space. "They're begging anyone, anything for help. The Zephyron are heading for their nursery worlds. Billions of children." Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. Humanity had been monitoring galactic communications for decades, learning, preparing, waiting. They had watched civilizations rise and fall, had studied every military doctrine, every weapon system, every strength and weakness. Earth's military strategists had concluded that humanity could not win a conventional war against any of the major powers. So they had decided not to fight conventionally at all. How long until the Zephyron reached the nursery worlds? Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer from his tactical displays. 6 hours, maybe less, Elena replied. Their gravity wake is disrupting subspace. If we're going to act, it has to be now. Marcus turned to his crew, 30 souls who had volunteered for service in the Shadow Fleet knowing they might never fully return to normal space. Extended exposure to the Shadow Realm changed humans in ways that science was still trying to understand. They could phase through solid matter, exist in multiple probability states simultaneously, and some claimed they could see potential futures branching like trees before them. They were no longer entirely human, but they were still humanity's guardians. "Open a channel to all ships," Marcus commanded. The communication system in the Shadow Realm didn't use electromagnetic waves or quantum entanglement. It used something older, more primal. It spoke directly to the consciousness of those listening. "Shadow Fleet, this is Captain Chen. Today we reveal ourselves to the galaxy. Today we show them that humanity's strength lies not in our weapons or our shields, but in our willingness to become something else to protect the innocent. We are the nightmare that hunts nightmares. We are the shadow that falls across tyranny. Initialize phase shift protocols. We're going to war." Lieutenant Sarah Kim, barely 25 and already one of the best phase navigators in the fleet, began the complex calculations needed to partially materialize in normal space. It was a delicate balance. Too much presence and they would become vulnerable to conventional weapons. Too little and they couldn't affect the physical world. They had to exist in the sweet spot between real and unreal, between dream and waking. "Captain, I'm detecting something unusual," reported Chief Science Officer Dr. James Liu. He was one of the original researchers who had discovered the Shadow Realm, his hair prematurely white from an early exposure incident. "The Zephyron ships are generating harmonic frequencies I've never seen before. They're actually warping space-time around them, creating pocket dimensions of altered physics." Marcus studied the readings. The Zephyron were even more advanced than intelligence had suggested. Their ships didn't just use gravity as a weapon, they fundamentally rewrote the laws of physics in their vicinity. In any conventional battle, they would be invincible. But the Shadow Fleet didn't fight conventional battles. Elena, remember the old Earth story about the Trojan horse? Marcus asked. She smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. You want to let them capture us? Not capture. I want them to think they're capturing empty space. Sarah, can you phase us into their gravity wells? Not the ships themselves, but the distorted space around them. Sarah's fingers danced across her console, equations flowing like water across her screens. It's theoretically possible, but Captain, if we mistune the phase variance even slightly, we'll be crushed into nothing. Then don't mistune it, Marcus said simply. The Axiom Council's final desperate message reached them, broadcasted on all frequencies in all languages, a last cry for help from a dying civilization. Marcus could hear children singing in the background, unaware that death approached on crystalline wings. The Zephron fleet, over 200 vessels strong, moved toward the nursery worlds with inexorable purpose. All ships execute Shadow Protocol 7, Marcus ordered. We're going to show the Zephron that there are worse things than death. There are humans. The Shadow Fleet began to move, not through space, but around it, through it, beyond it. They slipped between dimensions like smoke through fingers. To any sensors watching, space remained empty. But space was no longer empty. It was full of human will, human determination, and human fury carefully controlled and precisely directed. As they approached the Zephron fleet, Marcus felt the familiar sensation of existing in multiple states simultaneously. He was on his bridge, but he was also dispersed through space, feeling the cosmic winds, tasting the radiation of distant stars. His crew experienced the same dissolution and reconstitution. Their consciousness stretched across probability fields. Contact in 30 seconds, Elena announced, though time had little meaning in their current state. The Zephron haven't detected us. Their sensors are configured for normal matter and energy. They can't see probability shadows. Marcus watched the massive Zephron command ship, a crystal fortress the size of a small moon, its faceted surface reflecting light in impossible ways. Inside, he knew, the Zephron hierarchs directed their campaign of conquest with cold efficiency. They believed themselves apex predators, the ultimate evolution of military might. They were about to learn that humans had evolved beyond military might. Humans had evolved into living weapons that existed outside the normal rules of war. 20 seconds, Elena counted down. All ships report ready. Phase variance locked. The Axiom City ships continued to die in the distance, their beautiful structures collapsing under gravitational stress. But their sacrifice would not be in vain. The Shadow Fleet was about to teach the galaxy a lesson about humanity. 10 seconds. Phase shift initiating. Marcus felt reality bend around him. The sensation was like falling in all directions at once while simultaneously standing perfectly still. His vision fractured into 1,000 possibilities, each one showing a different potential outcome. In some they succeeded, in others they ceased to exist. The path between victory and annihilation was narrower than an atom's width. 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. The Shadow Fleet materialized not in normal space, but in the twisted reality surrounding the Zephron ships. They existed in the pockets of altered physics that the Zephron had created, turning the enemy's greatest strength into their greatest vulnerability. To the Zephron sensors, space remained empty, but space was full of human ghosts armed with weapons that existed in probability rather than reality. Fire, Marcus commanded, and the word existed in all dimensions simultaneously. The Phantom Strike. The weapons of the Shadow Fleet were unlike anything the galaxy had ever conceived. They didn't fire projectiles or energy beams. They fired possibilities. Each shot was a quantum cascade that forced matter to exist in multiple contradictory states simultaneously. The first Zephron ship hit by these probability weapons experienced every possible future at once. In one reality, it exploded. In another, it imploded. In a third, it simply ceased. The ship couldn't decide which fate to experience, so it experienced them all, tearing itself apart across dimensional boundaries. Commander Elena Vasquez coordinated the attack from her position in phase space, existing as a tactical consciousness spread across the entire battlefield. She could see the Zephron response before it happened, watching probability lines converge and diverge. The crystalline ships tried to adapt, their harmonic frequencies shifting to counter the assault, but how could they counter something that didn't fully exist? Marcus, they're trying to collapse our phase variant, Dr. James Liu reported from his science station. They're incredibly adaptive. They're actually learning our dimensional frequency. Marcus had expected this. The Zephron were not stupid, merely unprepared. Given time, they would find a way to counter the Shadow Fleet's advantage, but time was something Marcus didn't intend to give them. Execute the Fibonacci sequence, he ordered. This was a tactic developed by Earth's military theorists, who had studied both ancient human warfare and advanced mathematics. The Shadow Fleet began to phase in and out of reality in a pattern based on the Fibonacci sequence, each ship appearing and disappearing according to mathematical principles that created a recursive loop in the Zephron targeting systems. The Zephron weapons fired at where the human ships were, would be, had been, might be. Their perfectly ordered battle formation began to fragment as friendly fire became inevitable. Gravity weapons meant to crush human vessels instead caught their own ships in the crossfire. The crystalline hulls designed to refract energy attacks shattered under gravitational stresses they hadn't been designed to withstand. Lieutenant Sarah Kim pushed the RSS Spectre through a particularly complex phase maneuver, sliding the ship through 7 dimensions in 3 seconds. She could feel the ship's consciousness, for all Shadow Fleet vessels developed a form of awareness after extended exposure to the Shadow Realm. The Spectre wanted to hunt, to strike, to protect. It was no longer just a ship. It was humanity's will given form. "Captain, I'm detecting something from the Axiom worlds," Sarah announced. "The Zephron have stopped their advance. They're pulling back to deal with us." Marcus felt a grim satisfaction. Every second the Zephron spent fighting ghosts was a second the Axiom children lived. But he knew they needed to do more than delay. They needed to win decisively, to send a message that would echo across the galaxy. "Dr. Liu, can you analyze their harmonic communication?" Marcus asked. "Already on it, Captain," Liu replied. His consciousness partially merged with the ship's sensors. "They're not just communicating. They're trying to create a resonance cascade to force us fully into normal space." This was dangerous. If the Zephron succeeded, the Shadow Fleet would materialize completely, vulnerable to conventional weapons. But Marcus had studied military history, particularly the ancient Earth general Sun Tzu, who said that all warfare was based on deception. "Let them think it's working," Marcus ordered. "All ships begin false materialization. Make them believe they're succeeding." The Shadow Fleet began to flicker more solidly into normal space, their ghostly forms taking on substance. The Zephron, sensing victory, concentrated their efforts, pouring energy into their harmonic weapons. Their formation tightened, bringing their ships closer together to amplify the resonance effect. Elena understood Marcus's plan immediately. "You beautiful bastard," she whispered across dimensions. "All ships prepare for reality bomb deployment." The reality bomb was humanity's most terrible weapon, though it wasn't really a bomb at all. It was a paradox made manifest. A device that forced a small area of space to experience every possible quantum state simultaneously. The Shadow Fleet had only used it once before in testing, and the results had been so horrifying that Earth's government had nearly banned it. But against the Zephron, against genocidal conquerors who would slaughter billions of children, Marcus felt no hesitation. "Sarah, can you place us at the center of their formation?" Marcus asked. "Captain, that's suicide," Sarah protested. "The reality bomb affects everything within its radius, including us." "Not if we're not really there," Marcus replied. "We're going to do something no one has ever attempted. We're going to exist purely as probability, no physical component at all. We're going to become living thoughts." The crew exchanged glances. What Marcus was proposing was theoretical at best, insane at worst. To completely abandon physical existence, even temporarily, meant risking never being able to return. They could become permanently lost in the Shadow Realm, neither alive nor dead, existing forever as quantum ghosts. "I volunteer," Elena said immediately. "If we're going to ask the crew to do this, we lead by example." One by one, every member of the Shadow Fleet volunteered. They were humans, and humans had always been willing to sacrifice everything to protect the innocent. It was their greatest weakness and their greatest strength. "Beginning final phase transition," Sarah announced, her hands steady despite what she was about to do. "Releasing physical anchors in 10 seconds. Marcus felt his body begin to dissolve, not painfully but strange, like becoming water vapor. His consciousness expanded, touching every crew member, feeling their fear and determination in equal measure. They were becoming something beyond human, beyond physical, beyond the galaxy's understanding. 5 seconds to full phase transition. The Zephron believed they were winning. Their harmonic weapons reached a crescendo, reality itself screaming under the assault. They were forcing the human ships to materialize, to become vulnerable, to die like every other fleet that had faced them. 3 seconds. Marcus sent a final message to Earth, unsure if he would exist to receive a reply. Shadow Fleet engaging. Tell our families we chose to become legends rather than victims. 1 second. The Shadow Fleet ceased to exist in any conventional sense. They became living probability, conscious mathematics, weaponized thoughts, and in that state they deployed the reality bomb. The explosion, if it could be called that, was visible across 3 star systems. Space itself cracked like broken glass, showing glimpses of other dimensions, other realities, other possibilities. The Zephron fleet, caught at the epicenter, experienced every possible form of destruction simultaneously. They burned and froze, exploded and imploded, aged to dust and reversed to their component atoms. Their perfect crystalline ships became chaos given form, existing in states that physics said were impossible. But the Shadow Fleet, existing as pure probability, rode the quantum storm like surfers on a wave. They had no physical forms to destroy, no matter to scatter. They were ideas with weapons, consciousness with purpose, humanity distilled to its most basic element, the will to protect. When reality finally reasserted itself, the Zephron fleet was gone. Not destroyed, not scattered, simply gone, erased from existence like a mathematical error corrected. In their place, the Shadow Fleet rematerialized, their ships scarred by dimensional stress but intact. The crew, forever changed by their complete phase transition, found themselves back in physical form but different. They could see probability lines without technology now. Feel the pulse of dimensions beyond the normal. Status report, Marcus commanded, his voice hoarse as if he hadn't used it in years. All ships accounted for, Elena replied, though her eyes now held swirling galaxies where pupils should be. The Axiom worlds are safe. The Zephron fleet has been removed. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. Sensor data from 1,000 watching civilizations showed the impossible. A fleet of primitive humans, a species that had been dismissed as barely spacefaring, had defeated the unstoppable Zephron Empire in less than a standard hour. But more than that, they had done it using methods that defied understanding, weapons that shouldn't exist, tactics that operated outside the known laws of physics. Marcus opened a channel to the Axiom Council, to the Galactic Senate, to every listening ear in known space. When he spoke, his words carried across dimensions, heard not just through communication systems but felt in the consciousness of every sentient being within a dozen light years. This is Captain Marcus Chen of Earth's Shadow Fleet. We are humanity. We are not conquerors. We are not empire builders. We are guardians. We stand between the innocent and those who would harm them. We exist in shadows you cannot see, in dimensions you cannot reach, in possibilities you cannot imagine. Leave the peaceful alone. Respect the sanctity of life. Or face us. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle across the galaxy. We are humanity. We are here. And we are watching. The transmission ended and the Shadow Fleet began to fade from normal space, returning to their existence between dimensions. But they left behind more than just the debris of the Zephron fleet. They left behind a new understanding, a new fear, and a new hope. The galaxy had believed humans were primitive because they still used projectile weapons and chemical rockets. They hadn't understood that humanity's true evolution hadn't been in technology but in consciousness itself. Humans had learned to weaponize thought, to make war with probability, to fight with the fundamental forces of existence itself. As the Shadow Fleet disappeared into their dimensional realm, leaving normal space empty but somehow still watched, civilizations across the galaxy began to reconsider their opinion of humanity. The humans were not primitive. They were not weak. They were something far more terrifying and wonderful. They were protectors who had evolved beyond the need for conventional strength, warriors who fought with reality itself as their weapon, guardians who existed in the spaces between spaces. And they were watching, always watching, ready to emerge from shadows to stand between evil and its prey. The Axiom children sang their songs of gratitude, though they would never fully understand what had saved them. The Galactic Senate convened emergency sessions to discuss humanity's application for membership. No longer a question of whether humans were advanced enough, but whether the galaxy was ready for them. And in the Shadow Realm, the Shadow Fleet maintained their vigil, forever changed, forever watching, forever ready. They were humanity's gift to the galaxy and humanity's warning. Play nice or face the species that had learned to make war with existence itself. The galaxy would never be the same.